Hey guys, I just wanted to do my review for The Flash, Season 2, Episode 19, Back to Normal. The episode starts with a montage of how Barry starts off his morning with him getting up and using his super speed to get dressed, get some coffee, literally run to work, and then speed through all of his cases, and then switches to a montage that now that he no longer has his powers, that he has to get up earlier, take his time getting dressed, wait online for coffee, and he can't get through all of his cases on time, and it basic and essentially the next scene is Harry chewing out the rest of the team for how stupid it was for them for Barry to let Barry hand over his powers to Zoom, and now he has to go look for Jesse, who he's been able to track down because people at Earth 2 vibrate at different frequencies. They leave cellular dead zones, and that's how he's able to track Jesse's trail. And Iris calls him out, saying he was just responsible for his involvement. They made a decision as a team. Wells says otherwise, since he was against it to begin with, and he has to take that gun that he usually carries around with him in case he has to bump into other Earth 2 metahumans taking refuge, like King Shark or Dr. Light. He goes to her apartment, and he says that he doesn't want to have anything to do with him. She doesn't forgive him for killing the turtle just to help save her from Zoom, and that she's as afraid of him as she is of Zoom. And so when he's driving back to the lab, Harry, he crashes into a guy who apparently has super strength and uses it to rip open the driver door and kidnap Harry, assuming that he's the Dr. Wells of Earth 1 slash Eobard Thawne. Of course, there was a camera in the van that Cisco had installed, so that's how they find out what happened to him. Iris takes him to the scene of the crash, and Barry takes his forensics kit and collects evidence to find out what happened to him. Iris takes Harry's laser cannon, and basically the guys turn out to be Griffin Grey, who is not the most comic book accurate version of the character, because I know that I was reading a little bit about him. He's supposed to have this magnitude of powers, like super strength, and I think they said magnetic manipulation and other stuff like that, and he was kind of like this playboy kind of character, and he was from Bart Allen's friends with Bart Allen, but this version turns out to be a teenager who got super strength from the particle accelerator, but every time he exerts that super strength, he ages rapidly. And he shows a picture to Harry saying that that was from a year prior, even though he currently looks like he's fit. He physically looks like he's in his 40s, his 50s. And Harry tries to explain that he's not who he says he is, but his words about how selfish his actions were and how they affected and ruined people's lives still ring true to him and hit Harry pretty hard, since the particle accelerator on his Earth 2, as we all know, had the same impact. And he says that Harry has to find a cure for him or else he's going to die. Barry tells Jessie about what happened to her father. Cisco's able to identify Griffin Grey's identity, and Jessie offers to figure out how she's physically aging, because biochem was apparently one of her 5 college majors, which is the more they talk about Earth 2, the more it seems like they're trying to make this this near utopian society aside from evil metahumans, and it just becomes a hard pill to swallow. But anyway, they find out that what's his name, Griffin, is trying to steal from Ace Chemicals, Batman Easter egg, and so Cisco, Barry, and Joe try to go and confront him, but Barry ends up getting injured, and and witnesses Griffin physically age, and then Griffin just escapes. And after Iris bandages up Barry, he talks about how Iris was like one of the first people he saved during the pilot, and how even though he didn't know what was going on, he felt like the world was standing still, and he just felt like they were the only two people in the world. And it seems to get a reaction of Iris who's saying, I guess bringing more of those feelings she has for Barry to the surface. And so Jesse just confirms that from the fingerprint blood samples from Griffin, how his super strength is, how the more super strength he uses, the more he exerts, the faster he ages. And even though in Joe's words, he doesn't want Barry to be a human pinata, Jesse and Cisco are able to get some of the Dwarf Star alloy from Felicity and put it into the chest portion of Barry's suit, which is the same alloy that's used in Ray Palmer's Atom suit, but it would only absorb one of Gray's punches. And after that, Barry's just a sitting duck. And while Harry's still being held captive at the amusement park by Griffin, he says that I know enough about chemistry to know that you've been spending the last half hour just diluting a solution. Harry admits there is no cure for him, and then Griffin gets pissed, but then Barry, Cisco, and Joe show up at the amusement park. Barry's dressed as the Flash. Iris and Jesse are like in a van, hacking into the lighting system at the amusement park, just so it looks like the Flash is like kind of pulling a Batman, where you blink and you miss him, or he's always like, and to create the illusion that he's not losing his super speed, while Joe and Cisco create distractions. And Barry ends up taking two punches from Gray. The second punch is where he exerts the last of his energy, and he physically ages to the point where he just dies of old age. But the irony is that he reverts back to his younger. Griffin reverts back to his younger self. And Jesse comes in and embraces Harry. They apologize to one another. Harry says that ever since his wife died and he failed to protect her. Not sure if that was before or after or because of the particle accelerator. He felt something inside him broke, and then when Zoom kidnapped Jesse, he snapped and developed this whole ends justify the means mentality. And Jesse explained that she kind of understood where he was coming from when she was put in a situation where she didn't know if he was ever going to see him again. And so Harry just promised to be a father that Jesse could be proud of, and that he won't cross the same lines that he has been through the past season. And he realizes that he has to atone for his action on Earth 2, starting with recreating another particle accelerator explosion in order to help Barry get his powers back and defeat Zoom once and for all. Which is supposed to be like a reference to the Flashpoint comic book in which Batman did the same for Barry and during that timeline. And it's a foregone conclusion. Since we've seen Barry in the flash forward for Arrow, where he shows up at Laurel's grave and he speaks with his powers. But I guess the question is that if it's really going to be on a smaller scale, or if it's just going to be like, it's going to be kind of like a parallel to Smallville, in which the series had two meteor showers. This is going to have two particle accelerator explosions, both taking place on Earth 1. The second one's going to get Barry's powers back at the expense. It's going to affect other people and create other metahumans. Maybe Caitlin will get powers. Maybe Jesse and Wally will become metas as well. And speaking of Caitlin, we find out that she is she's still in Zoom's lair. She comes face to face with Killer Frost, who's also being held captive, along with the man in the Iron Mask. And we learn from the both of them that they both have mothers who are kind of, as Caitlin Frost describes it, as frigid narcissist. Killer Frost says it was because of the fact that that hers has been like that ever since their brother Charlie died. Caitlin never had a brother, so she can't explain why the Earth 1 version of her mother is like that. But it basically gives you more insight into both versions of Caitlin and how they could become how our Caitlin could become evil, and how the trauma that caused for both of them. And you also learn about how Killer Frost, how she dropped out of med school, but she still had to move back in with her mom, and she knew enough about what kind of glass it was, carbine, that Caitlin was able to create use like electricity to shatter the glass. But Caitlin Frost double crosses her and tries to kill Caitlin instead of keeping her word of helping Caitlin get back to Earth 1. And so Zoom comes in, phases through Caitlin, and catches one of Killer Frost's icicles and impales Killer Frost with it, killing her, which is sadly the last we're going to see of her, at least this version of her. And Caitlin's just still begging. He threatens to kill the man in the Iron Mask if she tries something like this again. Caitlin just is begging Zoom to take her home, and then he just decides that, that he's going to do that, but it also gives the idea that, I've already brought this Earth 2 to his knees, I'll just go bring Earth 1 to his knees and terrorize that world. And so, and at first I was like kind of frustrated watching this episode because of all like the plot-induced stupidity, because like it was the result of all the plot-induced stupidity from last week's episode, and it just felt like filler because I've seen this already. I've seen an episode from season 1 in which Barry lost his powers, but then the more I thought about it, the more I remembered that episode 7, season 1, Barry is more like the hero in distress. Here, Harry's the one that needs to be rescued, and Barry is trying to use his intellect and skills to be a hero in spite of being powerless and not be a victim, which I thought was which is what made it even better. Which made it even better twist on that premise. And again, I liked how Iris is able to help out. I liked how Jesse was able to fill in for Caitlin and use her expertise, and the fact that Harry keeps talking about how smart she is. It doesn't feel like an informed attribute anymore. And even though I was a little disappointed that we didn't get a comic book accurate Griffin Grey, maybe we'll get like an Earth 2 Griffin Grey somewhere down the line. At least this version of it was it was kind of forgivable because he was probably the most sympathetic villain we've had on the show thus far. So all in all, I'd say it was a pretty good episode, and I enjoyed it quite a bit, and definitely a lot better than last week's episode. Did you guys feel the same way? Is there anything I forgot to talk about? And how do you think the second particle accelerator, what effects do you think the particle accelerator is going to have on next week's episode, besides affecting Barry and maybe some of the other main characters? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you like this video, like, share, and subscribe, and I will talk to you guys soon. Stay tuned for my reviews of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Arrow, and Legends of Tomorrow later today. Take care.